Hey YouTube, JP Dillon. Today we're going to look at about a 1970 Lloyds AM/FM all transistor radio. I think it's a 7. Let's see what model. 7H13G. And this was something at an estate sale I picked up. I thought it was just kind of unique. It was cheap. Nobody really wanted it. It sat there. I waited till half off day and got it for next to nothing. But it does need work. It's 4 speakers. It's got a near frozen tuning dial. The selector switch is frozen. The tone still kind of works, although it's sticky. And most notably, it's got a hum. Let me just plug it in here real quick. Okay, so with some power, here's what you get. Now, it's not humming as much as it did, but it's got a bit of a hum to it. You can see it also has a dial light. It's kind of fancy. Doesn't do a whole lot. You can hear a little bit of sound here, but not much. But we definitely need to get this unfrozen and see what else is going on with it. That's loose too. The hum's getting worse the longer I leave it on. So I guess let's take the back off and check out what we're getting into. So here it is on the inside. And you can see it's not a cheap thing. It's got a power transformer. It's got a big dropping resistor and that filter capacitor there. And then you've got probably a good, I would say 2 watts, 2.5 watts there, alpha transistor, interstage transformer. I'm pretty much betting on all of these capacitors being bad. This is just of that generation where it's probably going to do that. It was nice enough that they left a schematic diagram here for you. Series 12A. Looks like it's run off a negative voltage. Everything's PNP. That could suggest it's older than 1970 because most of the stuff that's PNP. It's very likely germanium. It definitely looks old enough, maybe late 60s actually, for it to be germanium. But as you can see, it's got decent speakers, Fosters, and it's got little tweeters up top here. No capacitor between them though. So that's cool, but very likely all of these capacitors are bad. I'd be willing to bet. We need to get this selector switch unstuck here. I think what I might do is just hose it down with some fader lube to get it kind of unstuck. Clean all these switches and pots and see if it comes back alive. Let's see here. This wasn't getting hot, so the filter's probably just starting to open. But let's get some deox in there and see if we can't clean that up. I've noticed that both the F5 fader lube and D5 have a solvent cleaner in them that does usually a pretty good job of getting rid of the nasty sticky grease here. I'm just going to hose this thing. We'll clean the other controls while we're at it. Maybe dribble a little bit back here into this tuner shaft just to kind of loosen things up a little. Maybe the capillary action will suck it back in there. See if we can't bust these loose. That's a little better. Not great, but it's better. But that thing's still solid. Let's see here. If I can pull the knob off, this is going to be a two-handed. So with this off, I think I'll trickle some down inside of the shaft here too. And just let it sit up a little bit. Another interesting thing is this has an interlock on it. As was usually reserved for tube gear. You didn't see a lot of solid state stuff that had interlocks. Some televisions maybe, but usually not tabletop radios. Trying to see what transistors this thing has. Although, of course, I can just look to the schematic, can't I? Yeah, 2SB32, 2SB33. That's most decidedly germanium. So this is older than I thought it was. Probably mid to late 60s. But again, it's not a cheap build. So it might be worth messing with. Although these old germanium transistors are tending to get lossy and leaky, and usually it's starting to turn. Ugh. Alright, let me get a heat gun. Okay, so I'm going to use this on the low setting, and I'm going to go in the back there, kind of where the metal plate and the bearing is, and see if I can't loosen this up. Trying not to melt things. I just want to heat it up so it'll turn. I don't want to get it too hot, because then the poor little knob will melt. There we go. That's starting to loosen up there. Let's get some more fader lube into that shaft. Now it's starting to loosen up. What I'm hoping for is that the action of this and the fader lube will push out the old grease. Make it work a little better. Doesn't hurt to add a little more. Much better. Much better. Now it's almost effortless to turn. And the fader loop has done its job on the tuning shaft too. Could have been the adjacent heat as well, but that turns almost effortlessly. Okay, well, let's power it up again and see if we get any different result now that we've cleaned the selector switch.
Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
What if the kid who cut your grass worked like most financial advisors? Instead of a straight up $20, you get something. Many people to consider there's a woman.
Doesn't really turn the volume all the way down anymore. I think I might have lost my ground.
No big deal. Okay, so what? Now tell me we're not ready for a woman president. Come on.
Watching the game at his house, we decided we're going to go out and hit him.
The oscillator is very off.
Her radio. Let's go play. Let's
Until it.
No, no. Legs.
And probably feel.
Yeah, everything's reading about maybe like, I don't know, 10 megahertz higher than it actually is. Way down at the bottom, that's like 87. It's supposed to be like 80, 89, 90. Anyway, it's interesting.
We're sponsored by the Hotel del Coronado. Join the founders and brewmasters of Coronado and Allagash Brewing Company.
It doesn't turn down all the way. It's still pretty loud.
Brew Bash at the Hotel del Coronado.
So my guess is that either the volume control isn't grounded anymore, the internal wafer is bad, this is another, let's see here, do they do ground direct coupled or decoupled? Some of these they'll have like a capacitor or something that decouples the ground. I don't really know. This isn't a hot chassis. It's got a transformer, so I would assume that they have a fixed ground point. Interesting. I think I'll grab a meter and see if that control is grounded, and if it's not, see if we can ground it and make it usable. Alright, so looking with our meter here, if we come over to the low side of the control, low side of the control is at ground, 0.3 ohms. However, the center tap here, which should be at 0.3 ohms, is 600 ohms. So this volume control is defective. That's kind of a bummer. It's not terribly hard to get a replacement. It's probably a 10K with a switch on it. Let's see what the schematic says it is. Is that really 100? No, that can't be it. Let's look around here. That's technically your audio amplifier stage. Trying to see where it is. It's not easy to spot on here. That's a 5K. There it is, up top there, right at the output of the detector. Or actually, no, that's your, oh, what is that? I guess that is your detector transformer right at the output there. Is 5K volume control. Problem is finding one with a switch on it. Not impossible. And this is all riveted in, so I don't really have one that I can just pop in its place. But anyway, that's where it's at. It does kind of sort of work. Not very well. But I imagine that most, if not all, of these capacitors are bad. The dial, let's kill the light here. The dial is definitely off. But I can still tune to the bottom, and it doesn't tune near 88 megahertz. It's tuning way higher than that. Likewise, the AM 600 is like way down here. So they're both equally off, which makes me wonder, is the dial pointer misaligned? But that stops at 100, and before it stopped at 0. So both the AM and the FM oscillator are off, because it stops at 0 and stops at 100, so the string's right. It's nice to have this selector switch all spiffed up. So that's probably why they got rid of it. They got frustrated with this because these contacts were oxidized, you weren't getting much sound out of it. And then this doesn't turn all the way down. It's sitting there at about 600 ohms, which ain't going to work. But I don't think I have anything like that that'll fit or that'll work in this application. Let's just take a quick look. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a switch volume combination for this thing. So we need to get that. I need to get a bunch of capacitors for it. It doesn't look too particularly difficult to service. I mean, really it just looks like a matter of pulling those knobs off, unsoldering the speakers. There's a handful of screws that hold it into the plastic cabinet. Take this bracket off here up top. This all comes out. I'm sure it could work perfectly fine if everything was spiffed up. It's probably not worth messing with. but I hate to just toss it. So if I can see, if I can get a hold of another potentiometer, then we can get this thing going. Otherwise, it's probably just going to sit for all eternity, in which case I may end up selling it. But in any case, thanks for watching the video. If you see a part 2 of this, you know I found a control for it and decided to proceed. Thanks for watching.